Well, good evening, everybody. I had another little adventurous day. It's always an adventure in Max's shed. Maybe that's not exactly the message I'm trying to convey. Anyway, have you ever noticed that no matter how much you burnish down the tape, there's always a little spot you don't get, and there's a little fuzzy push through that you got to touch up with a brush later? It's amazing how hard it can get to get a clean demarcation line. But anyway, this is the A5M so far, and this is the Nichimo kit, and I've got the Nito Fal over there, or Kate over there, hardening, drying, and put a primer coat on. I had some problem with the airbrush. Started getting gummed up, so I had to strip and clean it. But I still have to paint the wheel skirts blue, put in a few details on the windshield, the decals, but it's coming together. These old tiny scale airplanes, you know, these old eyes, they're hard to get down, but it's starting to look nice. It's going to look good in the collection because I don't have one. And of course, this is a naval aircraft, and a lot of folks may not know this, but we actually fought these in World War II, even though it's got the fixed gear. Some of the smaller Japanese carriers couldn't handle Zeros. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the U.S. Navy may have faced these at the Battle of Coral Sea when they went after that light carrier. And anyway, so somebody left a comment, had said EME 109, they said it's BF, and I remember there was a big debate about when you're dealing with Messerschmitts, ME and BF, because there's it gets complicated when companies changed hands and stuff. And I think Bernard at Military History Visualized, and I forget his name offhand, that young fellow who does military aviation Visualized, I think. I'll see if I can find the link and put it down there. But apparently Messerschmitt and I don't know, I'll say this wrong, but Baureische Flugzeugwerks had a partnership for a couple of reasons, not the least of which, if I'm not mistaken, Erhard Milch hated Willy Messerschmitt. In fact, it seems like a lot of people did. Anyway, so he says, you know, we'll never build a Messerschmitt airplane. So Messerschmitt, if I remember right, he had to farm out his contracts, but he had this relationship with the company. Eventually, he was in charge of the company, and the name got changed back to Messerschmitt, which is why you have, like, you know, BF 108, BF 109, and then ME 410, ME 262, ME 210. But apparently even the Germans flipped it back and forth, even in their official manuals, which if I can find that link, I'll put it in there, he even gets into. So despite how passionate people get about this little bit of trivia, technically, even according to the Germans, either one of them is perfectly acceptable. Tomato, tomato. So I'm running with it. I'm not going to tell anybody they're wrong for, say, using ME or BF, unless they're talking about there was no such airplane as a BF 262. There was only the ME 262. But that's like, you know, when was Revell, and when was Revell really monogram? And, you know, it's kind of, in a way, a similar thing. It's as much company letterhead changing. Anyway, I put some, since I had used the Swordfish decals to test, which actually they're sitting here on my test airplane, and actually the Novo decals needed a lot of TLC, but they did work. So I went to my spares and got some similar looking decals, not exactly right, but I went out on an old Pathé, you know, that British newsreel thing, and saw some Swordfish footage, and managed to make something pretty reasonable, close enough for government work. And really about all I have to do is get the engine on, one or two little more pieces of rigging, like the antenna, put the gun on it and the torpedo, and I probably will fold the wings just to do something a little bit different. Then again, there's really not a lot. If you fold the wings, they really just hinge back in those corners. There's not a lot holding them on. That's not practical. I may have to just put them on like normal. No big deal. I made sure to hook them together when I spray painted the camouflage pattern so that at least it'll line up. I got a little bit of progress on the Stagecoach. You literally have to put turnbuckles and things on there to hang the hinges on, so it's a process, and as I was warned, it's a tricky little bugger. So I got it over there hardening, letting the glue harden, and so let's see what else. Oh, Remember that I said yesterday that I dropped the bottle of paint? When was the last time you did that? Well, Zippy did it again today. My light gray paint that I'm using a primer coat on the, should be able to touch it now. Yeah. On the Kate torpedo plane. And I was having problems. The gun was gumming up and everything. And so I decided to go ahead and pick the bottle and put it out of the way. And of course, I broke the rule. You never pick a bottle of paint up by the lid. And I had not properly secured the lid. I picked it up straight to the floor. There's a big mess over there. And here's a bunch of the gray paint right there on that thing, that rag I used to clean it up. So that's 2 in 3 days. Yee-hoo! I've got my annual quota in. Oh, and I think that is everything for now. Still waiting on the hard copy of the instructions for the stagecoach to show up, but the ones that were sent to me online have been a little fuzzy, but been doing good enough. I'm getting by. I can read the writing on it and everything. And one other thing I was going to show you about this little Nito kit, because they're Nitos, not only has the folding wings, but apparently it's designed to be able to have a folding landing gear. But the problem is that now that there's a little bit of a glue in there forming some kind of a bond, it's actually staying in place, but they were falling out. The fittings were too loose, so I glued it in place. But this one decided it would move a little bit, so apparently I accidentally got just the right amount of glue in there to give it a snug fit where it won't fall out, yet you can still retract the gear. But I'm pretty sure I'll just put it hard in place. By the way, quick side note, and this is not an absolute. Apparently, at Pearl Harbor and possibly Coral Sea, the Kate torpedo planes were green to help them blend with the seawater, and of course counter shaded on the bottom. I know this is a Val, but I'm making a point. But the actual Val dive bombers, a lot of them were painted this sort of imperial Japanese green or light gray. It's kind of like the underside of the airplane. But by Midway, they had decided to paint most of them green, and just not all of them. I'm sure some of them are various states of that. Just like at the Battle of Coral Sea, the Americans still had the red dot in the fuselage, in the star, and by the Battle of Midway, of course, because red shows up well. It made from distance people were shooting at it because they thought red circle must be Japanese. So by Midway they'd gone to strictly the white star with the round blue field, and of course later in the war they put the white bars on it. After the war they put the red stripe inside the white bars. And for a little while there, some genius got the bright idea to put red trim around the American star and bar. I have no idea what the idea behind that was, and confusion reigned again, so that didn't last too long. But depending on the exact era, that was one of the markings that we used. So, I got a rough cut of my interview with Pete Vetri and sent it to him, so give him a chance to look at that and see what he thinks. Maybe send me some more pictures. Unless he's happy with that version, I can send it up. We talked for well over 2 hours. I chopped off 30-40 minutes of just us going off and doing other stuff, so try to keep it on track. Well, he brought up an interesting point that a lot of car models for certain companies, apparently, since the car manufacturers often use the same frame for many cars, even in the kit model companies, a lot of the car molds had inserts that would stay in place. So if they were going to make run a few thousand of a car, pop them out, and then they go, okay, let's do this other car from the same manufacturer that has the same frame and everything, same engine. So all they would do is just pull out the inserts for like the body and those components and put in the other ones, but they would leave the frame, the engine, or whatever was common in there, just the way they do it in the real automotive world. So I just thought that was kind of neat. That's a way to save a lot of money. he was saying that some of these molds are over 1,000 pounds, and they're on huge. God. I mean, every time I see a mold being moved, it's being moved by a forklift. All that to stamp out a little bit of plastic, it's just amazing. It still kind of boggles my mind. So, anyway, let's see. Is there anything else to cover for tonight, or is that pretty much it? I did watch 2 of those movies that James sent me from Islip, New York. Thanks again. I watched I Bombed Pearl Harbor, which is, it really focuses more on Midway than on Pearl Harbor, but it's the story is told from the point of view of one of the Navigator bombardiers on a Kate torpedo plane level bomber. And I was telling my wife, I was like, they're spending more time focusing on Midway than they did Pearl Harbor, but it's called, I Bombed Pearl Harbor, and she made a great observation. She goes, well, this movie was made in Japan for the Japanese audience. If you were trying to sell a movie to the local audience, would you rather focus on a victory or a failure? Like, victory or defeat. And I was like, okay, makes sense. And then we watched another one that was made, that movie was made in 1960. Then we watched a movie that I think was made in 1969, which had some of the same actors. The Falcon Squadron, this is about the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force when they were upgrading from the Nates, the fixed gear army plane, to the Hayabusas, which or Hay-8s. So anyway, the what do we call those? Oh gosh, I know this. The Oscar. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, they were getting their first retractable gear, high performance fighter. Real modern airplane. But it was the reverse of the other movie. The first movie, I Bombed Pearl Harbor, is mostly about the fighting. It does get into the guy's personal life when he goes home on leave, but they keep that down to 8 or 10 minute segments. The other one's the exact opposite. It's just all about these, people and the lives and the blah, 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 and 10 minutes of fighting. It's not what I turned this on for. Although a lot of them did have some pretty cool model airplane work, and obviously you can tell they're models. I was telling my wife, this reminds me of a Godzilla movie without Godzilla, and I was like, and we even said, if you put the Godzilla march music to it, and just saw the U.S. Navy as Godzilla, you could. That's the vibe. Even some of the music was slightly similar, and but I enjoyed them. I haven't seen the other 2, but definitely preferred I Bombed Pearl Harbor. But thanks again, James, for those movies. And I was watching them I was slacking on watching them instead of in here building models. Whoosh! Because the weather it was raining cats and dogs, and I just didn't want to make the 20-foot trek from the house to the TARDIS. So anyway, moped moment. That is, I'm really starting to like that little airplane. Tough to build, but great little product when you're done. But I think that's all I got for tonight. Yeah, I'll let you guys go. It's time for me to go wash up, and I'm feeling the dinner hour approaching. Okay, I promise I will never do that again. Right, guys, you have a great evening, and we will see you for coffee in the morning. How about that? Good night.